Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for today's edition, Christmas Eve edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And up first here, we've got the hazardous weather graphic, and there's a snow advisory out for this evening, I believe until 9 p.m. for the Juneau Borough and Northern Admiralty Island. And again, a snow advisory could see up to 3 to 5 inches of snow by 9 p.m. this evening, and then it should shut off or taper off as the weak trough moves on to the east. Picked up about an inch of snow already, 1 to 2 inches around Juneau already, and so that should continue to accumulate, possibly, as I said, up to 5 inches. Up to the north, on the eastern Arctic coast, this stretch of the coastline here, wind chill warning out for winds of 15 miles an hour or greater, and that'll result with the well below zero temperatures up there. Wind chill temperatures will be below 60 colder than minus 60 in this zone. Otherwise, the wind chill advisory still extends over toward Barter Island, Kaktovik, and also on the western coastline here for wind chills to 50 degrees below zero. And actually, winds are much stronger here on the western Arctic coast. Point lacing gusts of as high as 40 miles an hour this afternoon with blowing snow, reducing visibilities down to a quarter mile there. Otherwise, we've got winter weather and wind chill advisories. Winter weather advisory here for the passes of the eastern Brooks Range. Winds will begin to gust to 40 miles an hour there in the forecast later tonight and into tomorrow. And that'll create areas of blowing snow, low visibilities, and also winter weather advisories here through the central interior for the continued gusty winds and areas of blowing snow, reducing visibilities, mostly along the higher elevations, again, the Elliott Highway and those locations, Elliott Highway and the Dalton Highway, mostly through the passes there. And moving on to satellite imagery, other than the breezy conditions, not really much going on up here over the interior. Temperatures well below zero up there on the north slope on out to the Arctic coast. Let's see, Nuiqsut was down to 42 degrees below zero a few hours ago, and Umeå Airfield sitting right around 40 degrees below zero. That's just the actual air temperature and not counting the wind chill there, but pretty cold temperatures down the east side too. Chicken was about 36 below, so a little bit colder than what we had in the forecast yesterday for those temperatures. And it'll be about that again tonight. Otherwise, milder conditions back here to the southwest, getting, of course, above zero out toward the coast there. And there's still a thing here over the northern Bering Sea near St. Lawrence Island, producing areas of light snow. Actually, pretty widespread, persistent area from Shishmaref, the Bering Strait, southward across let's see, I believe White Mountain, Nome, on down along the Yukon Delta coastline, Nunivak Island into Bethel, and on down to Cape Newenham. Kind of a persistent area of light snow going on all day long there. Clear conditions and colder into the interior. Not a bad day, some fog around Cook Inlet, especially northern Cook Inlet today, otherwise dry. And Kodiak Island sitting on the north side of this next system here that's starting to rotate up. We've got a weak trough right along the North Gulf Coast extending down into the Panhandle. Again, where it's a little stronger, 0.4 of an inch of rain falling at Sitka. Light snow showers showing up, making landfall along the coast, Cordova, and into Prince William Sound today. Heavier amounts, so, and warmer temperatures, Middleton Island, up around 40, and they picked up about 1/4 of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours. And back to the west, this area of cloudiness, mostly mid and high level clouds up through here into the Bering. But there is snow now showing up, making landfall here along the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula, Sand Point, very close to the eastern Aleutians here with some snow showers as far west as Atka this afternoon. And then dry conditions, looks like possible clearing there around Shemya. And on the chart today, here's that frontal boundary there that's trying to push the snow up into the area there. Definitely winds gradually on the increase, currently running around about 20, gusts 30, 35 miles an hour. Even windier at St. George Island, they're getting gusts up toward 40 miles an hour at St. George for peak wind gusts this afternoon. Here's this area of snow right through here, mostly with an upper level trough that's really kind of persistent up there around St. Lawrence Island. It shows up a lot better in the upper air than it does here at the surface, but it is resulted in that area of light snow, fog, and of course clouds, lower flying conditions through there. And this is the gradient through the interior between this Arctic high up over the Arctic and lower pressure across southern Alaska. And it's that gradient that's creating the fuss in some areas of the interior on up to the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast. And again, that's going to continue through tonight. Very light winds again could probably hold on to some fog through Cook Inlet, maybe even Prince William Sound. Well, probably not so much Prince William Sound with the clouds and moisture moving in, but probably the fog will leave Cook Inlet later tonight when a little bit of cloudiness rolls in aloft. And as I mentioned, out to the west, not too bad. And the rain over the southern southeast coast. Again, notably, the heavier amount was at Sitka with about 4/10 of an inch, otherwise less. That'll continue into tonight. The winter weather advisory, or the snow advisory, will end for the Admiralty Island, Juneau area, but it'll stay pretty unsettled through tonight. Break right off the coast here. Eventually, it'll roll through, but it'll be pretty quick ahead of this system pushing northeastward. Still a chance of snow showers along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, kind of increasing there, southern Cook Inlet, on down along the Alaska Peninsula. Dutch Harbor has a better chance of seeing some light snow than Nikolsky does. Those chances increase, especially on the south side of the peninsula, Chignik, Sand Point, maybe some snow showers staying east of the Pribilofs, and a few flurries possible, St. Lawrence Island, cloudy skies, but this area light snow dissipating throughout the night, snow or blowing snow with the winds increasing here, the passes of the eastern Brooks Range. And the next front south of the Aleutians, isolated snow showers right over the Aleutians. That thing's slipping by to the south, keeping the rain to the south, so it'll stay in the cooler air with snow showers over the eastern Aleutians there. Bering Sea, not too bad, just kind of a cool northeast breeze here with isolated snow showers embedded in it. Some snow showers possible here developing throughout the day over the southwest mountains, possibly up into the southern Kuskokwim mountain areas. Otherwise dry to the north, staying windy here in the east. A lot lighter winds now on the western Arctic coast, and maybe some clearing possibly. Definitely losing the snow down through the Seward Peninsula area. And again, much lighter winds up here. Red Dog gusts 41 miles an hour this afternoon. Be a lot less in the way of wind up there tomorrow. Probably windier here over the Delta Junction area in that zone there where they get those gusty winds, I think right along the Tanana River. And here, moisture increasing, looks like a chance of rain if temperatures get nudged up high enough along the North Gulf Coast. And some of that snow could work into eastern Turnagain Arm and maybe up to the Talkeetna, southwest Copper River Basin, increasing moisture along the western slopes of the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Wind and rain on the increase. Rain will possibly make landfall late in the afternoon from Sitka on down along the coast of Prince of Wales Island with an increase in the winds due to that system. But it looks like that will not actually drive right in, but slowly weaken, and we'll see the next day tracks up to the northeast here, so we'll keep it unsettled here along this coast and to the south with drier conditions, outflow winds there, keeping it drier, Lynn Canal into the Juneau area with just clouds, chance of moisture here along the North Gulf Coast. And this next system, first low actually moves up and troughs out, dissipates into this trough along the west coast with a chance of snow. Lows for tonight, again, anywhere from 20 to 40 below northern east side and teens south central Alaska, lower 30s Kodiak Island, 30s for the Panhandle to highs near 40, especially around Sitka, otherwise in the 30s for the southeast coast, staying below zero north and northwest of the mountains. 25 to 30, Bristol Bay, up to near 40 on Alaska, upper 20s for the Pribilofs, near zero through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Lows the following morning, not much different here in the north. Milder here in the south and southwest, though, and then the afternoon highs, again, below zero in the Tanana.
And now, Aviation weather around Alaska.
Good VFR, much of the interior, increasing marginal VFR here across southern Alaska with some IFR slipping on up into Prince William Sound. IFR here, southern Kodiak Island, across the Alaska Peninsula, and not quite reaching the Pribilofs, and marginal VFR there, and then a patch of IFR farther out to the west. Some IFR, eastern border of the Panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR across the Gulf of Alaska, northward, building northward up there toward Isabel Pass, maybe into the eastern Talkeetnas. And for the afternoon, that stays about the same up there. A little bit of increasing marginal VFR along the Alaska Range and over the southwest interior, but not quite the Yukon Delta there. Otherwise, VFR all the way up to the Arctic coast. IFR, southern Kenai Peninsula in the Gulf down to Prince of Wales Island along the coast. Fognak Island and maybe Kamishak Bay and north side of the Alaska Peninsula. And moving on to Wednesday morning, still pretty good VFR through much of interior Alaska. Patchy areas of marginal VFR here, nothing too significant. And then some IFR in across, from Norton Sound there down southeastward. IFR also the Bristol Bay zone, southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, Fognak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula eastward. And looks like VFR, Prince William Sound, Cape Yakataga to Yakutat, marginal out west in the Aleutians, and southern Panhandle IFR. That holds through Wednesday afternoon, flow of moisture right on into the southern southeast coast there, it not really moving north too rapidly, and holding across the Gulf of Alaska. Southern Kenai Peninsula increasing a little bit here in Cook Inlet and coming up to maybe Solovia Kenai area with the IFR, and then back southwest across Bristol Bay and still on the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise marginal VFR. VFR holding from the Copper River Basin right on up to the Arctic coast, and marginal VFR persists out in the Bering Sea. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan, another VFR day coming up for both passes there, and probably Wednesday as well. Lake Clark and Merrill started out VFR, gradually deteriorating to marginal, especially on the eastern entrances throughout the day. And for Rainy, VFR becoming marginal, taking a little longer there than it will for Lake Clark and Merrill, but windy staying VFR. Isabel becoming a marginal VFR early on, and Mentasta stays in the VFR zone. And Tanita, VFR, there's a chance of marginal VFR here on the eastern entrance. And then for Portage, marginal VFR with IFR eastern approach, and Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels at the surface here, well south of the Pribilofs, but north of Fox Islands there, and a little farther to north out over the western Bering. Again, hugging the coastline, cutting through the northern Panhandle, 2,000 feet, nudges up into Prince of Wales Island. And for the icing possibilities, this slowly approaching the coast here, but looks like just barely reaching it in the afternoon with a risk of some isolated moderate rime icing. And then this extends back to the west here, increasing icing chances. Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, could be probably a better chance there in the Barren Islands in toward Kamishak Bay, and then a narrow area slipping northward, mostly along the east side of the Alaska Range. And for the jet stream, southeast flow as this ridge shifts eastward a little bit there with this low progressing eastward as well. Actually another development right in here, and that's going to pull the moisture back up and milder temperatures into southern Alaska. High pressure holds over the Arctic, so dry over the interior. Weak upper low still hanging tough here over the, just near St. Lawrence Island, otherwise the main jet well south of Alaska. And for the 9,000 feet, low pressure near St. Lawrence Island, southerlies 15 to 20 with that, maybe 30 knots out of the east along the Arctic coast, 10 to 20 over the interior, and then stronger winds along the Gulf of Alaska into the southern Kenai Peninsula, maybe up to 30 knots with 20 to 30. Strongest winds just off the coast here of the Panhandle associated with that low center. 3,000 feet, 30 to 45 knots here. Strongest winds still to the west, but starting to increase along the coast, lighter to the east, and east-southeast 10 to 20 over the interior, 25 to 30 up along the Arctic coast, 5 to 15 over the Seward Peninsula and down in toward Bristol Bay, but picking up to 25 for the Alaska Peninsula. And the Aleutians, easterlies 20 to 35 knots. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, Shelikof Strait, North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, and the Panhandle. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists used this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, not a lot of change from yesterday here. Really about the same here in the Bering Sea and Bristol Bay, more or less, and Cook Inlet, maybe a little bit of an increase in the ice here over northern Cook Inlet, but not too much. And the forecast out here for the Bering Sea is for slow growth in the ice and slowly advancing south and southwest of the main ice edge. Coastal water forecasts, good gale force winds coming in tomorrow afternoon here, especially on the south coast, 40 to 45 knots. Storms will stay out to the west, at least through tomorrow afternoon. And seas up to 16 feet. East 35 to 40 on the north coast. Lynn Canal, north 25 on the increase. Southeast 15, Stevens Passage, kind of a break there. Southeast increasing to 25 late in the day for Clarence Strait. And gale force gusts for Clarence Strait, southeast 25 to 35 knots, and 20 gusts 35 for Stevens Passage. Lynn Canal, north 25 gusts 40, and we've got east-northeasterlies 35 to 40 knots on the north coast, seas near 20 feet, and then southerlies 30 to 35 knots with seas in the lower 20s here on the south coast. Prince William Sound, east 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Northern Cook Inlet, north 25, northeast 35, gale warnings out south of the Forelands all the way down into Kamishak Bay. East 35 for the Barrens, east 30 for the North Gulf Coast, and 20 knots for Prince William Sound. And then for Wednesday, lighter winds, northeast 10 for the Sound, seas slight, east 20 for the North Gulf Coast, but seas still up around 15 feet, southeast 20, 14-foot seas for the Barrens, and 30-knot winds here for Kamishak Bay and southern Cook Inlet. Cut that in half north of the Forelands. And Bristol Bay, northeast 30, and those winds carry right on down the coastline to Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, north 30 knots, and then Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southeast 30 knots, back to south 30 knots for the east side of Kodiak, and gale force northeasterlies with 11-foot seas for Shelikof Strait. Following day, east 15 here, Bristol Bay and the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast 15 on the Pacific side, southerlies 15 up towards Sitkinak and the east side of Kodiak Island. Much lighter winds for Shelikof Strait, variable to east at 10 with slight seas. And for the western Aleutians tomorrow, small craft advisories east 30 knots, seas 12 feet, and small craft advisories here for the central Aleutians, northeast 25, And we got small crafts, northeast winds 25 to 30 all the way to an Alaska Island. And then south of the islands there, easterlies 20 to 30, but north 30 on the north side of the islands, north to northeast 30 knots, AKwx, and that same wind pattern extending all the way out to Shimian-Attu with seas right around 14 feet. South of Nunivak Island tomorrow, north winds 25 knots, turn northeast across the Pribilofs, and north 15 for St. Matthew Island. Light winds 10 knots, north-northeast, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, northeast 20, north of Nunivak Island. And then along the southern Yukon Delta coast here, we've got north 25 the next day, so small craft advisories also for the areas south of Nunivak Island, northeast 25, turn north 25 for the Pribilofs, north 20 for St. Matthew Island, and about 20 knots also for the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island. Brisk wind advisories here, central eastern Arctic coast tomorrow, 25 to 30 knots right out of the east, east 20 on the west side. As I mentioned, lighter winds here for the area from Cape Thompson all the way down to Wales, down to 15 knots. Then for Wednesday, we've got northerlies, 15 to 20 from Cape Beaufort down to Wales. Light winds now, 5 knots out of the northwest for the west side. And even lighter winds here from much of the coastline, central and east side, but still tight enough gradient there to keep 30-knot brisk wind advisory level winds in for the areas toward Demarcation Point, Barter Island, those areas. And for tonight, look for blowing snow to develop over the eastern Brooks Range through the passes. Southerly winds could get up to 40 miles an hour in gusts and creating low visibilities in some areas, again, mainly the passes, higher elevations. And winds will actually start to diminish here later tonight on the west side and really come down after that. And then light snow showers possible here North Gulf Coast. Really not making much headway inland, possibly in the Kenai Peninsula across the south like we saw here a few days back. And trough keeps it unsettled, but gradually tapering off. The snow advisory ends for Juneau and Admiralty Island by 9 p.m. And precipitation increases with this front, bringing warmer air with it up to the north. But it doesn't really make much headway farther to the north. This next storm approaches the southeast coast and weakens on Wednesday. Chance of snow showers in the west, dry in the east.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.